Pick up your phone right now and look at the screen from across the room. For a lot of people watching this, that's already blurry. Now think about reading a street sign from 100 feet away, or spotting a deer moving through tree line at dusk. For millions of people, that's not just hard. It's impossible without a piece of curved glass sitting in front of their eye. So here's the question. Did ancient humans deal with this? Were hunter-gatherers squinting at the horizon, tripping over roots they couldn't see, unable to spot a predator until it was already too close? Or is something else going on here? Something that has almost nothing to do with genetics and almost everything to do with the last 100 years. Let's ask the stranger question. Not why do some people need glasses, but why did needing glasses become so common, so fast, in such a short slice of human history? Glasses themselves are old. Simple magnifying lenses show up in the historical record over 700 years ago, likely first ground by monks and scholars in Italy who needed help reading manuscripts by candlelight. For centuries after that, spectacles stayed a niche tool, mostly for older adults whose eyes naturally stiffen and lose close focus with age, a condition almost every human eventually develops if they live long enough. That kind of vision change is ancient, unavoidable, and has nothing to do with what we're talking about here. What's happened in the last few generations is a completely different phenomenon. Nearsightedness, the blurry, faraway kind, has exploded, and it's showing up in children, not the elderly. In some East Asian countries, well over 80% of young adults leaving high school now need corrective lenses. Even in places where rates used to sit comfortably low, they've climbed hard and fast across a single generation. That's not how genetics works. Genes don't rewrite a population's eyesight in 20 or 30 years. Something in the environment changed, and changed quickly. So what did? Researchers who study this call it a mismatch. Your eyes were not built for the world you're currently using them in. Here's the actual mechanism. During childhood, your eyeball is supposed to grow into almost exactly the right length for light to focus precisely on the retina, a process called emmetropization. Too short and far objects blur, while near objects stay sharp. That's farsightedness. Too long and near objects stay sharp while distance goes soft. That's nearsightedness, the one skyrocketing worldwide. And the length of a growing eyeball isn't fixed at birth. It's shaped by signals received during childhood, especially through the school-age year. One of the strongest signals researchers keep finding, over and over, across different countries and different populations, is time spent outdoors in bright, natural light. Kids who spend more hours outside consistently develop less nearsightedness. Kids who spend most of their day indoors, especially doing close-up work, develop more, almost regardless of how much of that close work is reading versus something else. And ancient humans, by necessity, spent nearly all of their daylight hours outside, hunting, gathering, walking long distances, scanning the horizon for food, for threats, for changing weather. Their eyes grew up soaked in the kind of bright, broad-spectrum daylight that even a well-lit modern room doesn't come close to replicating, sometimes by a factor of 10 or more. There's a specific biological mechanism researchers think drives this, and it comes down to a chemical called dopamine, released in the retina itself, not the brain. Bright light, the kind you only really get outdoors, triggers the retina to release more of this dopamine. And dopamine appears to act like a brake on eyeball growth, signaling the eye to stop elongating once it's reached the right length. Dim, indoor light, even light that feels perfectly bright to you sitting under it, produces far less of that signal. Less signal means less braking, and a growing eyeball with less braking tends to keep growing past the point it should, stretching just slightly too long. That tiny bit of extra length is the entire difference between sharp distance vision and a blurry horizon. It's a small chemical signal working quietly across years of childhood, deciding a huge amount about how the rest of a person's life will look. Literally. There's also the distance question. Most of what an ancient human looked at across a normal day was far away. Tree lines, terrain, animals moving in the distance, the sky, close-up focused work, sharpening a tool, threading a fiber, preparing food, absolutely existed, but it didn't dominate the day, the way reading, desks, and screens dominate a modern childhood. Some researchers think the eye, especially during its developing years, calibrates itself based on how it's actually used day after day. Spend your formative years focusing close, indoors, under artificial light, and the eyeball may grow longer to match that constant near-focus demand. It's an adaptation, and a fairly elegant one, just one that quietly works against you the moment you need to see anything farther away than a page. But here's where we have to slow down, because this isn't one clean story with a single villain, and it would be a mistake to oversimplify it. Genetics absolutely still matters. If your parents are nearsighted, your own odds go up significantly, independent of how much time you spent outside as a kid. Twin studies confirm a real, measurable hereditary component sitting underneath all of this environmental pressure, and researchers are still working out exactly which genes are involved and how strongly each one interacts with the environment around. Some children raised in identical indoor, screen-heavy conditions still end up with completely different eyesight, which tells you genetics is setting a kind of individual sensitivity, a dial that the environment then turns up or down. And it would be wrong to claim ancient humans had flawless vision across the board. Vision problems tied to injury, infection, cataracts, and ordinary aging existed then just as they exist now. Some ancient people almost certainly lived with genuinely poor eyesight and simply endured it, because no lens existed that was ground correctly enough to fix it, and no way to diagnose exactly what was wrong in the first place. What seems to have been rare, though, is this very specific modern pattern: widespread nearsightedness developing in childhood, tracking closely with how children spend their daily hours. That's the piece that lines up so tightly with industrialization, then urbanization, then screens, that it becomes hard to wave off as coincidence. Look at the populations researchers have studied directly and compared side by side. Groups living traditional hunter-gatherer or rural agricultural lifestyles today, with abundant daylight outdoor time and comparatively little sustained close-up reading, show dramatically lower rates of nearsightedness than urban populations in the very same country, sometimes even within the same extended family line. Move that same population into a city, into schools with long hours of close reading and screen use, and rates climb within a single generation, sometimes within one childhood. That timeline itself is the tell. Evolution simply did not have time to rewrite anyone's genes that fast. The environment moved. The eyes just responded to it, the way eyes have always responded to whatever they're asked to do. This lines up almost too neatly with history. For most of the 7 centuries after glasses were invented, they stayed a small, specialized tool. Then came mass schooling, then electric lighting that let people work and read long after sunset, then factory and office jobs that kept people indoors for most of daylight hours. Then, in just the last 2 decades, screens that put close focus work directly in front of children's eyes for hours at a stretch, often before they've even started school. Each of those shifts pulled childhood a little further indoors and a little closer to the page. And each shift shows up decades later as another jump in nearsightedness rates in whichever population adopted it. It isn't one single invention that broke anything. It's a slow, compounding retreat indoors, stacked generation on top of generation, until close-up focused living simply became the default setting of childhood. So imagine an early human at, say, 12 years old. Their days are spent outside, tracking animals, learning terrain, watching for movement at a distance under real, unfiltered sunlight for 10 or more hours at a stretch. Their developing eyes are calibrating around exactly the kind of visual demand they'll rely on for the rest of their life: wide open space, constant distance vision, abundant light. Now imagine a 12-year-old today, indoors under artificial light for the bulk of the day, eyes locked onto a page or a screen 18 inches away for hours without a break. Different demand, different calibration, different outcome, playing out inside the exact same species, the exact same biology, just pointed at a completely different world. Neither eye is broken, neither eye is a mistake. They're both doing precisely what eyes are built to do, adjusting to the visual world they're raised inside of. It's just that the modern visual world is one that human eyes never had to adapt to before. Not at this scale, and not this fast. Our biology hasn't failed us. It's kept up perfectly. The world just moved somewhere our eyes had never been asked to go. And that's really the heart of it. Ancient humans didn't have better eyes than we do. They had different childhoods. Their eyes grew up outside, scanning distance, soaked in sunlight modern indoor life simply doesn't replicate. Ours grow up close, indoors, focused on pages and screens, and end up shaped by exactly that instead. The blurry world so many people quietly live in isn't a flaw in the species. It's a body responding, with total biological accuracy, to a childhood spent very differently than almost every human childhood that came before it. If this is the first time you've thought about your own eyesight this way, drop a comment and let me know if it changes how you think about kids' screen time, or how you think about your own blurry mornings without your glasses on.